All right, we are picking up with some extra coverage of our discussion with two Zen Buddhists, Sunam Hoden and Reverend Koshin from the Dharma Gate Zen Center right down the road from us here in Troy, Michigan. So we want to get right back into it. And it's, one of the big questions, some top-down stuff. You mentioned that we as humans under the Zen Buddhist understanding, we're here, there is no afterlife, and there's no soul, there's no Atman, none of that. All right. So, and no supernatural stuff. There's no God. There's no. So then, what's the purpose of everything? I mean, is it just we're here, we live our lives, die, and that's it?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'll say more than that.
That's enough of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is, it's funny how often that question comes up.
Yeah.
Because we're all kind of raised in this Western world. I mean, it doesn't matter what how you were raised religion-wise. We probably have had some touch with this idea of that there's a heaven, or that there's some reward, or that a life well lived has some benefit at the end. So I would say, and I want you to answer this as well, but I would say my answer is, what is the purpose? This is a choice. Like I had issues growing up. I had with depression. I've had issues suffering. I've had hard times growing up into my 20s and 30s and beyond, right? Like that's a choice to suffer through life or not. And so do I get anything out of that? Well, I'm calmer. I'm happier. I don't seek anymore. I enjoy life a lot more. That's what I get out of it. I don't need something at the end to be more than that. And I think that's hard for people to think like, well, what's the point? Well, I choose to live a good life, and I choose to be kind to people, and I choose to put compassion into the world. I choose to help people wherever I can, how I can if they need it. I mean, that's a choice that I'm making to make the world a better place around me, right? And a lot of people choose not to do that.
Sure, of
that's
course.
also, to me, a choice. So that's the purpose. And, there's no, purpose is something that you make. It's not given to you by anything else. I know a lot of people are like, what was my purpose on, that somebody gave me? It's whatever purpose you want it to be. If you want your purpose in life to be led by anger and greed and treat people terrible and whatever, there's a lot of people in the world that are already living that way. I think it's a really terrible way to live, to have that type of mind all the time. I've been in that mind of anger all the time, right? And seeking all the time and not feeling like you're fitting in, but being able to change your mindset to see people as one, that there is no such thing as others, that we have an opportunity to be compassionate and kind and helpful. That's its own benefit in itself. That's the mind of compassion. That's my choice.
Okay.
So if I can maintain that mind of compassion until my body no longer maintains it, that's all I need. I don't need anything beyond that.
And what do you have to say, Reverend Koshin?
So if Zen is not about getting someplace else, then it's about being here. And if I'm here and I'm fully here, I'm grounded, I'm connected, I am living. I feel like I'm living life more fully in some sense. And I'm paying attention. And if I'm truly paying attention to everything around me, and as it changes and constantly comes into existence and out of existence, you can't help but have a sense of awe.
Mm-hmm.
You can't help but be enamored and engaged and a participant of life. And that means being with others as well. I find that my connections with myself, my loved ones, my friends, neighbors, my Sangha, my community, coworkers, etc., has been so enriched because I'm with them, not apart from them.
Mm-hmm.
And all of this, right? The meaning, the purpose, all of that I know, these are human constructions. Those are beliefs. Different people have different beliefs, so we know that it is just a construction. This is empowering. It's empowering. It's empowering me to live this life just as I have been afforded.
We have said in the past, like in Dharma talks and stuff as well, and I think it's, you had just asked, like, well, what do we get out of it, like, sometime in the future? What we have right now, and to be really grateful, is the greatest gift that we have right now is time while we're alive. That's it. I mean, especially from our viewpoint, is that if there's nothing else after, you have the time that you have. What you're going to spend that time on becomes very, very valuable when you view life that way. Do I want to spend my time yelling on Facebook, on political rants? Do I want to spend my time on greed or anger? Or do I want to spend my time on feeling miserable? Or do I want to use every moment that I have to be in a different way? And that's really if we're looking at what do I get at the end, it's like, what do we have now? That's what we have right now.
Yeah, that putting those your points together, it does show the other side of that coin, which I think is just fantastic. Which is, look, we as people who are alive right now, that's you only have time. This is the only time, and this is the only place that we know of anywhere in the universe that we have this extraordinary opportunity. So making the most out of it and making it in the best way possible, is such a cool thing. Yeah, okay, I got that. I really like it. But that being said, there's a tension. There's one small thing that's throwing me a little bit, and that is what you mentioned, Sunam Odin, is that there's only one thing. There's no separation. There's me, but I'm part of an interconnected whole. Okay, but does that not kind of like also, isn't there also a separate part of that, which is that we are separate as well? So there is a separate component and a togetherness component. Otherwise, you might find me at your house tomorrow night, taking advantage of all of the things you've gathered. And just when you come home and say, what the hell are you doing here? I'm like, well, I've decided that this is now my time to take advantage of this. And you're saying, wait, that's mine. And you know what I'm saying? You got that kind of...
Yeah, so when we're talking about this, we're talking about more of a sense of there is separate manifestations of, obviously, you're not a giraffe, right?
Right.
But you are in existence, and so is a giraffe. You're both from the same source. This planet has generated everything from the same source of when the planet was generated, right? That doesn't mean that that the giraffe comes and stays at your house because it owns anything that you own. It's not really, that's more of like a societal way of looking at. We're really looking at more of a way of everything is really from the same thing. And maybe a more practical way to look at that is to say it's a lot harder to have anger with somebody when you know that you're the same.
Yeah.
Right, we're from the same place. It's a lot harder to judge people when you know you're from the same place, right? When you're all from the same family, when you're all from the same thing, you start to respect life in individuals a lot different because we're all part of the same thing. There's no separation. Now, we have a lot of judgment in this country, right? We have a lot of people who have a lot of judgment against LGBTQ community because of who they are and who they love. We have a lot of, racist viewpoints because of the way that somebody looks, or, they don't like that people came from other countries because of their culture or the way that they talk or whatever it is. It's like that all starts to go away when you stop looking at definitions and borders and separation of individuals. It becomes nothing but being able to love not just human beings in a very different sense, but have respect for every other thing around us, every being around us, every squirrel that runs out is phenomenally beautiful. To your point, this is like the only planet that we're currently aware of that actually has squirrels, right?
Yeah.
Like, enjoy it. Like,
Enjoy it.
What are we looking at Mars for, right? There's things right in front of you that that you're squashing bugs in the bathtub. But like when you found that on Mars, it would be the greatest thing ever. Like,
it would be.
It changes your respect for what it is. That's really when we talk about this. All beings, one body. Is like we're all part of the same thing. It doesn't mean that we have community. We're not
property,
sure.
right?
Right, yeah.
Oh, and it reminds me of our conversation earlier where we talked about science. And if you go back to the very beginning of the scientific concept of the inflation period, then the Big Bang, and all of that. Well, that all came from one thing. There was only one thing at the beginning.
Right.
It certainly took on separateness components as expanded and grew and developed. But it started as one thing, and so it is. Looking back on that, you can kind of draw the same kind of conclusion. We're all from one thing, and therefore we should treat each other a lot better and live your life that way.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Okay. All right. What about, as we're talking about respecting other people and that sort of thing, what about physical surroundings and our, like, where you live and those kind of things? Is that important in the Zen Buddhist world?
I just actually gave a talk this past Sunday. It was a wonderful passage by Shunryu Suzuki in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, where he says people get excited about Zen and they want to go to a mountaintop. They want to go to a monastery. They want to have these holy experiences, these transformative experiences. He said, no, let's be where we are. So do your surroundings, does your physical space matter? I suppose it matters. I think there's something to be said for the aesthetics of tidiness and minimalist and keeping things simple, and that is important. But nevertheless, we can't all, not everybody has the choice, right? And so ideally, you should be able to practice wherever you are, whether it's sitting on the side of I-75, whether it's in our Zen Center, which is in a warehouse. We've had, I lead a Wednesday meditation service. We've had people up on the roof replacing the asphalt and making lots of noise, on the top of this metal roof.
Right.
And, that was a real gift because, it demonstrates it's not about being able to, it's easy. It is easy to create a kind of an isolation room and wall yourself off. It's a lot harder though to take that mind that we're trying to develop into a cacophonous world that is noisy and loud and discordant oftentimes.
Filled with other people and their interactions
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay, let me ask you a couple of structural questions I want to get to, and then I think we're running up against a clock and this extra period of time, but don't want to keep you too long, but I do want to cover this. The hierarchy. How is it formed in the Zen Buddhist community? Is there a leader at the top of the group and then, working its way down?
So it depends on, we talk about orders, right? So there's different groups over time that have developed different orders. And orders are relatively a modern invention in like 150 years or something. In the past, and in the tradition of Buddhism from the very beginning, is basically a teacher-student relationship. People would go through renunciation. They would become a monk. They'd take vows, which we still do today. And over time, they would take on students, and they would teach those students, and those students would move on. And some of them would form together into mountaintops or wherever, right? And they would end up with these communities. That's all it really was for a very, very, very long period of time. Depending on what that group believed or what that teacher believed, they would start to maybe form a different way of doing things or a different way of following different things. Now, in modern times, more modern times, and again, modern by like 150 years, as orders started to be developed, that would say, well, yes, we have a structure and it takes, so many people to be able to do this thing and that there's a process to be able to do this. That's what I went through. I mean, I went through a seminary program and then I went to Korea and did my final training in the monastery in this very tough program. And then I became a Sami monk, which is a junior monk. And I was that for 6 years. Then I went back, took full ordination as a bhikkhu or a full monk. Not every group follows that exact structure. So there is no main one person that's in charge of Zen Buddhism.
Okay.
It has never been that way. I mean, even from the time of Bodhidharma, who kind of created it, it just went from teacher to student until monasteries kind of formed after the third or fourth or fifth guy, then they started to put some structure around it. So, we have some hierarchy. After being ordained and we started Dharma Gate, so I'm the abbot, I'm, the bhikkhu, I can make teachers. Eventually, like Reverend Koshin, will be able to go through a process to become like a priest, but we're kind of stealing and borrowing a little bit of how other people have done it to try to create our own version of a Western order. But there is no one, there's no, Zen police. I think some orders try to be that a little bit, But they're scattered all over the place. I mean, Japanese Zen has its own structure, and Korean Zen has its own structure, and there's two main schools within that structure, and they do things differently and similarly in a lot of different ways. But it's not really built the way that other groups are, and there's no like main hierarchy that, like the only thing I can compare it to is like the Pope in Catholicism, right?
Right.
We don't have any sense of that whatsoever. And typically, if somebody has gone through training and taken ordination, like at least for thousands of years, they would take ordination and they would just stay a monk until they died, or they intentionally disrobed and said, "I'm going back to lay life."
Okay. And when you say disrobe, you don't mean,
No,
take the-
disrobe just means to take the
Yeah,
robe
right,
off.
okay.
Yeah, we don't
We
run
talked about
around
that earlier,
naked.
and I'm like-
I'm going naked. Yeah, no, it's just to take the casa off.
Oh, okay.
Meaning the ordination robe. Yeah.
And just a couple of lifestyle things, what about, because, the outside guy, again, me, this non-Zen Buddhist, is like, I'm thinking, well, do you, what do you guys do for fun? Do you allow smoking? Of anything? Smoking pipes, smoking cigars, marijuana, any of that?
I don't.
Not really.
But does Zen Buddhism prohibit it? Is there any rule against that?
No, not really. I mean, I had a teacher who used to smoke a pipe all the time. I've seen monks and a priest in Japan that smoke and drink beer, and actually a lot of clergy will be in bars smoking
Okay.
and drinking, and it's like nobody gets drunk. That's kind of the
Yeah.
we don't get smashed. I mean, so it's really moderation.
Yeah.
I would say that's really what we're looking for.
It might
but-
be just bringing this Western mind to it. And I'm thinking, well, everyone who's a Zen Buddhist, and certainly a Zen Buddhist monk, has got pure life. There's no smoking, there's no drinking. You're not surfing porn. I mean, all the rest of it. And yet, it sounds like that's not quite the way it is.
No, I was going to go
Yeah,
ahead before I
we-
say something I don't want to say.
we have guidelines. We have precepts. They are not commandments. They are not dictates.
Okay.
They are virtues that we try and cultivate, and it flows very naturally, very organically from these core tenets around impermanence, around emptiness and interconnectedness.
Very cool. I was going to ask, one of my questions was about tattoos, but I see that Reverend Koshin
Yeah.
has a number of tattoos, so
Yes.
that's obviously allowable.
In other cultures, it's looked at very differently.
Oh, sure, okay.
So, like, people in Japan still associate tattoos with, Yakuza, and so you have to be a little careful, but they get it now. I mean, like, what is it? 65% of all of America has, like, at least one tattoo.
Yeah, right.
So in the Korean group, you are not allowed to have any body markings whatsoever.
Okay.
They actually check you before you walk in.
Really?
But again, like we have like my Dharma brother has beautiful tattoos on his shoulders, and they were like, okay, we'll let him in because he's American and they understand that there's a cultural difference. But
Yeah.
typically, in the the older orders, you are not allowed to have any type of body markings or body modifications whatsoever.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that in the Jewish tradition, that especially the more religious grouping of that, they don't want tattoos, and if you have one, you're not going to be buried in a Jewish cemetery. So I wonder if that's being relaxed as well as we go forward here. I don't know. What about? Okay, I'm going to close. What about the robes, guys? And where do you get one of those? Or do you get one only if like you're in?
Yeah, I mean, it's
really cool,
You should
yeah.
really. It's funny. I'll tell you a really quick story. So when I was in Korea, they have obviously because it's Korea, so there's a million monks walking around. So there's stores, right?
Yeah.
You can go to a store to buy, robes like traditional robes and coats and stuff. But when you're there, you really have to show. We end up having cards to show that we've been ordained, or we have
Okay.
marks on our arm to show we're ordained. So. I was with somebody in Seoul right before I came home, and there was a tourist couple, and I was wearing a winter coat, and she wanted to buy the coat off of me because she thought the coat was so cool.
Yeah.
But she said, I walked into a store, and they wouldn't sell me anything. I'm like, it's because you're not clergy. And she spoke English. I'm like, that's like walking into a place to say, give me a policeman's uniform.
Right.
Right? Like, you really shouldn't be wearing or representing, right? So we have some trouble here getting them. So we had to have these made. We do have a Sangha member who happens to be a wonderful seamstress in out of state. And we'd modeled this after, some of the other robes we have, but we don't have a store. We don't have a monk robe store to go to. And I can tell you right now, Amazon is a complete waste of time.
That's not
right?
going to
It's a
happen,
costume,
right? Yeah. Okay.
right?
Costumes, right?
So, not having a traditional link, we have to do what we got to do. So
Yeah.
we're trying to stay, to tradition, but we're also in the West, so we're trying to do what we can do.
Yeah, they're super cool. What about hats? Anyone? You guys have any hats? Anything like that? No?
You know, Korean monks wear woolen hats all the
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
Some of the, after I'll send you a link if you want to see I have a video of when I went through ordination.
Sure.
With a really traditional, crazy music, and like all the senior people, they wear these like really cool Pope-looking hats. Like
Okay.
they have all these, like they're covered in robes, and they've got these weird like Pope hats and stuff like that too. But we don't do that here.
No,
We don't
okay.
wear.
But the robes, yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
All right, why don't you give us again, the audience, an idea of your website, where the website is, and how you get in contact with you. Let's have that.
Yeah, so the website is dharmagatezen.org. We have email on there if you need to reach out, but I would say everybody is welcome. Usually the time to come is a Sunday. Our service starts at 10 a.m. We do a little bit of chanting, a little traditional chanting. We sit for 20 minutes, meditation. I'll bet you could get through it, even though you said you couldn't do
I
it.
might give it a
I'll
try.
bet you could do
Okay.
it. And then we give a Dharma talk, which is basically, one of the teachers talking for about 20 minutes on a different subject or something that happened in relation to our lives. And, we do a Q&A. We all gather for tea. We do have a relatively large Sangha. We have over 100 members. Usually all of our mats are mostly full. I mean, we could have 60, 70 people showing up for Sunday service. So it's a great time for a community to get together and get to meet people. So people are always welcome to show up on Sunday and try it out.
Well, that sounds great. I encourage everybody to go and check this out. Check out Zen Buddhism in general, but if you're in the area, check out the Dharma Gate Zen Center in Troy and check out their website. It's a fascinating conversation. Really, very, very much enjoyed this talk with you guys. Go to our website, accessthepodquest.com. You can find out more about this show and all the stuff that we cover. Also, come back to the YouTube and like this conversation, like this video, as well as, of course, subscribe to the channel. The more, the better. I know we're getting 2 new subscribers coming up here later today. So the more, the better. You guys go there. We will be going ever forward.